Hi, and welcome everybody. We're back again with the Writer's Parachute, guiding writer and author dreams to a perfect landing. And today we have a very special guest with us, Leticia Ordaz, and we're going to be talking about her children's books. So those are amazing. So we're going to talk to her in a minute. But as always, you guys know we have a little housekeeping up front. Don't forget to like, share, and follow the Writer's Parachute on YouTube, and we're on pretty much every podcasting platform, but also we're over on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you want to go follow us there, it is at Writer Parachute with no S. So please be sure to do that. But before we move on, don't forget, as always, at the end of the show, I will have a writing, publishing, marketing tip for you, and we'll share that. We're going to pull the ripcord on something today that should be very valuable to you. But I have a question for you. We've been doing new in 2022 about self-care, about how important it is for authors and writers to use self-care to keep themselves motivated and on track. So today we're going to talk about being true to your own voice, to listening to yourself and what is important to you. You're going to run into a lot of people that have opinions and ideas, and they have their own track in life. And if you are passionate enough about your topic and your subject, then you have a true voice in what you're speaking on. And so you need to be true to that voice. You need to listen to that voice. You need to follow what your dream is. Absolutely get advice, but advice and opinions, we all have them. Some serve you well, some do not. So take the good and just ignore the rest. So just remember, when you are on your journey, your voice should be the loudest one that you hear. So I hope that helps you. And if you would leave us a note in the comments or in the chat about what you're going to be doing new for 2022 about self-care and listening to your own true voice. So let's go ahead and move on. And we want to welcome today's guest, Leticia Ordaz, and her children's book. Leticia is an Emmy-nominated anchor reporter in the Sacramento area, my hometown. So she has covered some of the biggest stories in the country. As a Latina mother of two Spanish-speaking boys, she sees the importance of having more bilingual books for them and other children to choose from. After spending countless nights translating picture books to her children into Spanish, Leticia decided it was time to write her own stories for the world. She wants her sons to be proud of their Latinx culture and to find children who look like them are represented in more picture books. Her first book, The Adventures of Mr. Mccaw, that she is excited to share bilingual stories with children around the world. Leticia hopes to break barriers and change statistics that show currently only 7% of all children's books published in the US come from authors and illustrators of color, and only 5% of the children's books currently feature Latinx children as main characters. Leticia Ordaz has found her own publishing company, and I'm going to butcher this terribly, so be patient with me. It is Cielito Lindo, I think I'm getting it, books to break through those barriers and change the narrative in picture books. So welcome, Leticia. We are so excited to have you today.
Donna, thank you so much for having me. What an honor for me to be chatting with you. I've been following your career for years.
Well, thank you. It's nice to know that I have a few fans out there. I'm so impressed with your books. You just came off the launch pad really fast, and you've just kind of not slowed down since. I actually love the Mr. Mccaw series that you're working on, but we have a few more things. You also wrote a book about your own journey to becoming a news reporter, and then you have a new book coming out, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So you worked for years. We talked about that as as a television reporter. And what inspired you to change careers and become a children's author?
What's so amazing about the author journey, Donna, is that you can do both. You can do it all, right? So being an anchor reporter is still my main job. That's what I do for a living every single day. And so yes, it's just a natural transition to also write books, because in what I do for a living, I tell stories every day. I read the news out loud to the city, to our community, to the world. So it seemed like a natural transition. And I didn't grow up knowing that I wanted to be a children's book author, but when I became a mother, it all became too real for me that this is what I had to do to give my children a voice, to give other children who look like me a voice. It all started when I was a little kid, Donna, going to the library and opening up books and not seeing people who look like me represented in these books. And so for me, that was really sad. And then when I became pregnant 10 years ago, going to the Barnes and Noble and to the local shops and to the libraries looking for those books for my soon to be baby boy, I found that there was really a lack of books that represented him, that represented my culture, and that represented the language. So that's when I told myself I need to become an author, not just for my own children, but also for other children of the world, because they need to be represented in books. They need to know that their stories matter, and they need to know that they're beautiful. So that was my main mission for wanting to become a children's book author as well.
Well, and you're absolutely right. I've gone into these schools. I worked as a reading specialist before. And what I find when talking to most of these children is that they don't read simply because they don't see themselves in the story. They can't relate. And, this is why, caricatures of animals are often popular in children's book, because it does kind of take away that conversation. But I think there is, a kind of a sea change towards opening up more culturally diverse books, so that kids do see themselves. They do see themselves as the hero. They see themselves as, being inside these stories. So bravo. So now all of your books are available in Spanish. Why is that an important step for you as an author?
For sure. So being a mother of children, I want them to know my language. It was easy for me to learn Spanish because my parents knew very little English and knew mostly Spanish. So it was easy for me to learn it. But now, children go to school and sometimes they don't want to speak it. No one else, none of their friends speak it. Their teachers don't understand them. So then they start losing the language. So for me, I said, how cool would it be if I created these bilingual books where my own children and other children could be proud to learn another language? Because, in other countries, they speak multiple languages. In Paris, you could be speaking up to 4 or 5 languages. So here in America, why do we only focus on speaking one language? So I wanted to make my books bilingual also for children who didn't come from a Latino background, who are learning Spanish. So many more children are embracing other languages. They're going to dual immersion schools. And I thought it would be cool for every child to be exposed. You don't have to be fluent in Spanish to pick up one of my books. It's English and Spanish on each page. So if you can absorb a few words with your children, like kite in my book, papalote, if that's something that your children can learn, if they can learn the colors, if they can learn the story and identify some of the words, I think it's amazing. And yeah, that was my mission, is to create bilingual books. And when I first pitched my first book, The Adventures of Mr. Mccaw, to a major publisher, they actually came back and said, we love the story, but does it have to be in Spanish? So those are the words I heard from a major publisher. And for me, that was a deal breaker. I decided that I wasn't going to work with that major publisher and that it was my turn and my mission to start my own company. And that's what I did with Cielito Lindo Books.
Right. And that is so amazing because you see this kind of in multifaceted ways. I know that I've worked with children where they do speak English fairly well, but they also speak Spanish because in their home, like you, when growing up, their parents do not know a lot of English. They're more immersed in the Spanish language, and so it was difficult for them to even have the help in reading because the adult didn't understand it, and the child was having to like translate it to them, but then how does the person know if they're saying it right? So I do love this idea because it kind of brings the whole family together so that everybody can enjoy the story, whether they speak English, whether they speak Spanish, or whether they speak both. And then on the other side of it, as a former teacher, I'm so excited about language arts. if you're learning a language and you have the ability to go get a book that's both in English and the language you're learning in, that just gives you a deeper understanding and a better flow into learning that language. So yeah, I'm very impressed. So I have another question for you. So if other authors and writers, because I do get this question a lot, want to have their books translated into other languages, what would your advice be for them?
Well, I would say to really look at the topic of what their book is about. I mean, I'm all for your own voices, and because we're so underrepresented as authors, Latino authors, as you mentioned, right now there's only about 10% in the entire country. So I really feel like you have to write a book that connects with that audience. So often I hear from some people who say, I translated my book, but it's not selling. And then you really have to ask yourself, why aren't the children connecting with it? If your target audience is Latinos, but you don't understand the culture, you didn't take the time to research it, you didn't have a sensitivity person look at it, and it's not relevant to the culture, or maybe it says something offensive to that culture, I really think that you need to figure out what your purpose is. Is your purpose only to sell books? And if that is the answer, I would say don't translate it. Make room for other authors to come forward and provide those books that are culturally relevant to their audience. My books are selling so well, not just with the Latino population, but also with everyone, the grandparents who want to buy the book because they want their children to learn another language. And I can tell you that the Latino community and brown communities, Black communities are really connecting with my books. And so that's why they're selling. And they love that it's teaching children around the world about cultures. So I'm not discouraging you from doing it, but I'm saying find your purpose, and what is your purpose? Because you may not sell books if you're not connecting with your audience. I know so many teachers have told me, I have 5 Spanish books in my class, but it turns out none of them were written by a Latino, and the kids are not connecting to the books. Well, on the other hand, my books are on the shelves of Reading is Fundamental, a program in Los Angeles that allows children to go into this giant warehouse with millions and millions of books, and the kids pick a book for the love of reading. The teachers cannot assign an assignment with it. They cannot tell them what book to choose. And I'm getting messages day after day that children are choosing my book, and there's a reason for that. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying analyze your purpose, and definitely your story has to relate to the community, I feel, in order for that book to be successful.
Right. And I absolutely agree with you. You shouldn't just translate the book for it to be in multiple languages. It needs to be translated. And again, so glad to hear you talk about the sensitivity readers, because I think a lot of people skip that step because it's difficult to find good sensitivity readers. But you do need that, especially when you're crossing into a language that you're not familiar with and into a culture that you're not 100% familiar with, because what we think as just normal language doesn't always translate correctly and can be very offensive in the way that it's presented. So I'm glad that
That's for sure. I read into that with somebody. A teacher had asked me to do a reading of her book, and it wasn't going to be bilingual, but I just so happened, she wanted another set of eyes, and I read it, and in there she was talking about different colors, and in it she mentioned that nobody wanted to pick the brown color. And then I went back and explained to her that that could be very offensive to the Latino culture, to brown cultures, because so often children who are brown are made to feel like they're not beautiful, they're not represented in books. So if then you write a book and mention, even though you don't mention a race, you mention that the brown color, nobody wanted to choose that color, I find it offensive. And I felt like at that moment, I was her sensitivity reader saying, this is a terrible idea. Do not do this. You could offend many people by writing that. And even though that was not her intention.
Right. And it's a very good point, because again, they do kind of identify that. It's like so much in the media which you work in, cultures are referred to as brown people or Black people, or they are referred to as a color. So I could see where that would very easily translate to being offensive to someone, in that culture. So yeah, very good point. So let's shift gears a little bit. So your first and third books, The Adventures of Mr. Mccaw and Mr. McCaw's Cielito Adventure, and I know I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. So what inspired you to tell these specific stories? I love them because you not only told a great story, you drew your children into this story, which is very exciting.
Yes, Donna, I had a trip to Mexico with my children. We take them every summer to be immersed in the culture, and they happen to have a kite named Mr. Mccaw. And we happened to be in Cabo San Lucas 2018 when Hurricane Bud was approaching, and my children, the wind was blowing, whipping around, and my children are begging us, please, can we take the kite one last time? Can we take Mr. Mccaw outside to fly him? And we couldn't resist. We had to take him out. And after numerous adventures with the kite, ends up getting swept away in that storm. And as you know, when a child loses a toy, it's absolutely devastating. And sometimes for them, it feels like the end of the world. But what I thought was so cool was at that moment that we were in Mexico, everybody stopped what they were doing. They stopped putting sandbags on the doors. They stopped boarding up windows. And actually, they all stopped to help look for our kite. So I thought that was such an amazing story of a village coming together to help these two little boys. And I thought, if I tell this story, it's going to show children that their story matters. And we were actually locked into our hotel because of this giant storm. And I grabbed a piece of paper and I told my husband, this is going to be a book. And as my children played with other children in that play center, I wrote my first draft of Mr. Mccaw. So that's how it all started.
I know. I always find it amazing how people are inspired. What was that moment that sparked them? And that's such a great moment. So now what about the second book, Mr. McCaw's Cielito Adventure? How is that a little bit different?
Yeah, that takes a twist. It's a happy story. And what I wanted to do was create a smaller version of Mr. Mccaw for babies. So this is a touch and feel book. Growing up, I always loved touch and feel books, and my children loved touch and feel books like Pat the Bunny, but I never found anything that was culturally relevant. So I thought, how cool for babies to learn another language. So there's like these little flaps that you can lift up, you can touch the feathers of Mr. Mccaw. So I really thought it was a beautiful thing to create a book like this for babies to enjoy and for mothers to start reading to their babies really young. There's a Mr. Mccaw, and I called it Mr. McCaw's Cielito Adventure, is because I want families to get started reading right away when mom is pregnant. And I don't want them to be intimidated by a big book. Just pick up a book and start reading to your baby, immerse them in the culture. I love touch and feel books. And I'm really trying to dispel the myth from some big publishers that have said Latinos don't read. They've actually said this, and it's not true. Latinos do read. We're looking for good books, and when we're not finding them, it's time to create them, and that's exactly what I'm doing.
Well, I have to say, I am so very impressed. I mean, just your meteoric rise in the children's book industry has been amazing to watch, and I get to sit on the sidelines and cheer you on. So I so appreciate you agreeing to come on here today. It's like I am such a fangirl.
Thank you.
So let's talk about your second book, which really was a fangirl one for me. It's That Girl on TV Could Be Me. It's about your journey, but I want to know why this was such an important message for you to get out for specifically your Latinx community.
Definitely. So a lot of people are like, you wrote your story, and I did, and it wasn't my idea. Like a lot of us think like, is my story important? Should I write my story? And actually it was a publisher in San Francisco, a medium that I teamed up with. And I actually had sent him a first version of Mr. Mccaw. And while he said he loved that story, along with my query to him, I had sent my bio, and he says, well, we love Mr. Mccaw. We're very fascinated by your story. And we think that you have the power to inspire a lot of families who maybe come from an immigrant background. And for me, I was the first in my family to go to college. So he said, if you told your children's autobiography, maybe it would encourage other young girls to go to college. And after giving it some thought, I said, why not? If I have the power and the resources to change someone's trajectory, where in grade school, they could start seeing themselves in a positive light and tell themselves that they can do it. And one of the pages of That Girl on TV Could Be Me, I talk about being that super shy girl in class and being terrified to read out loud. But I remember the one teacher, Mr. Heinrich from 6th grade, who always said, you can do it, you can do it. So I talk about locking myself in my room when I got home and practicing in front of the mirror for 2 entire hours every day. This really happened. And so I love sharing the message of you can do it. And Mr. Heinrich, unfortunately, has passed away, and I didn't get to share this book with him, but I really am looking to find his family because he doesn't know it. But by asking me to speak up, that's why I'm a journalist today. I was that shy girl, and who knew? Everyone was telling me like this wasn't a good field for me when I told them I wanted to be a journalist. But all along, Mr. Heinrich, when I was in 6th grade, knew that I would find my voice and then I would give other people a voice. So I love sharing my story about my immigrant background and just encouraging other people to follow their dreams. You don't have to necessarily just be a girl. This is for boys too. I just want children to know that when someone tells you no or that you can't do something, don't listen to them. Go for it. Whether you want to be a journalist, whether you want to be an astronaut, there's always going to be naysayers in life. And we have to see our own potential. Yes, there's teachers and other people in our community who can bring that out, but we ourselves have to advocate for ourselves. So that's an important message that I think is really resonating with our young people. And I get letters all the time from young women who are so touched and are telling me that they're going to go to college despite their counselors telling them that they don't belong and that they're not college material. So that is why these books are so important.
Absolutely, they're incredibly important, not only for the inspiration and blazing a trail for those who come behind you and talking about it, but I love the fact that you include your struggles along the way, which I think it really resonates with kids, because so many people will go, oh yeah, you can go do this and it's so easy, and it really isn't. It takes fortitude and it takes perseverance, and I love that that is included in the book, that you do show some of your like little mishaps and missteps and what you learned from them. And I think that that's a big story that helps kids too, is that you don't always have to be perfect. It's like you're going to make mistakes. It's more about getting up and trying again. So
Oh, they love hearing about the mistakes, especially like the on-air things that happened when I was splashed by a cow at a dairy farm with poop, things like that. They see this as such a glamorous world, but we also show them like the true meaning of television. And in the last page, I say TV news isn't about glitz and glamour. It informs people and gives everyone a voice. And, I tell children dreams can come true no matter the color of their skin or where they're come from. You will face hardships, but you have to believe in yourself. And so I always want children to walk away with that message that you can do it. There's going to be struggles, but you have to keep going forward.
absolutely, and I think that's an important message. So we're going to shift gears just a little bit and talk about why you're here on the Writer's Parachute. So every writer and author has some unforeseen challenge or obstacle that they have on their road to writing and publishing their book. So what was yours and how did you overcome that?
Yes, well, I became an official author and my book was released March of 2020. So that is as our world was shutting down because of the pandemic. Here I was, I had everything lined up. I had, all these author events, in-person school visits, and everything was canceled. And I thought, how am I going to get my book out to the world? But the thing is, I don't give up easy in life. I just don't. I don't take no for an answer. So I connected with so many wonderful school districts, with children's hospitals, with orphanages. And I was able, through the Zoom world, to reach out to thousands of people. I mean, I was connecting with countries, all over the place. And that was so amazing for me, because when I first published my book, I thought it's going to be so awesome to reach people in our region. But then my reach was even wider than I ever expected. So I feel like when we think that life is throwing something bad at us, maybe it's opening the doors for something else. So it's really, I'm not saying the pandemic is a blessing, but reaching so many people has been a blessing. And the fact that like I'm able to reach so many kids around the country, around the world, who are telling me that they are now encouraged to be writers, that they're writing their own stories, to hear that they believe in themselves, that they know they are smart, that they know that they matter. To me, that is everything as an author, and my purpose for writing books.
Right. And that's so amazing. And I have to tell you, this is how big of a fangirl I am. I was really appreciating when you were showing the videos. I believe it was like last year, early, when you were up for the Latinx awards, and that you were literally watching them on a Zoom on your TV. And I'm like, that is so cool that we can get an award via Zoom. And I was like, that is so amazing. So you won several awards. So can you mention just a few of those for us?
Yes, what's been so incredible is to win the International Latino Book Awards. It's one of the largest book awards in the world, and actually authors from all over the world are participating in this. So it's very competitive. So to hear that my first book, The Adventures of Mr. Mccaw, won 4 of those awards right away, going up against major publishers, was just so satisfying for me, because it was kind of a message to those publishers saying, in your face, first of all, Latinos do read. And second of all, people did want a bilingual book, and this is proving it. So yes, there were so many reasons for me to celebrate that victory, because it was a victory I felt for our community, for our children to be represented. And then I also won another 3 awards just this last September for That Girl on TV Could Be Me, sharing my own personal story. And I just love to be able to give back to my own community and inspire young girls. So that's why this one is so important for me.
Well, it is amazing. So a little birdie told me that you have another book that's soon to come out called The Carousel King and the Space Mission. Tell me what that was about. Can you tell us anything? Give us a little sneak peek inside of that one.
Yes, you have some good sources, Donna. I'm going to show you the cover, okay? I haven't revealed it to anyone in a podcast or newscast yet, but here you go. This is the cover, The Carousel King and the Space Mission, and it's also a bilingual book. And what's so special to me is that my son, Maxton, who was 10 years old, came up with the whole concept. He just loves carousels to pieces, and he loves space. So he connected both of them, and it's just a journey of believing in yourself and the affirmation of what can happen when you believe in yourself. In it, just a little clip, as the Carousel King says, I am fierce, I am brave, I can do anything. And it really inspires children to go after their heart's desires, and why not get to the moon? So yes, my son helped me with this story, and it's so special to us. And I just want children who read it to know that they belong in STEM fields. We're super underrepresented in those fields. I believe it's under 8% of Latinos who go into engineering fields. And from my time in the classroom and in colleges talking to kids for Career Day, they've often told me that when they have shared dreams with counselors to say, I want to be an astronaut, I want to do this, their teachers will turn around and say, shouldn't you just be a car mechanic? So those are the kind of messages that we have to continue to fight. So that's why these books are so important. When someone else may be telling them no, that they trust, we have to tell them, yes, you can do it. And that's what this book is all about.
Absolutely. I am so excited to get my copy of that. Maybe I can convince the author to send me a signed copy, since I'm such a fangirl, and I'm amazing. We are breaking the news on this new book. So thank you for sharing that with us. But so I just have one question about that. So do we have a budding author coming in your son? So we're going to see more books from him?
Yes, my 2 boys have given me so many ideas. And when people say, like, what should I write about? I have no shortage of stories thanks to them, because they have such amazing imaginations, right? We as adults, like, it's not like children, right? Like, they're not told no. So they can think of any possibility, right? Like, their imagination is just such a beautiful thing. And I'm always inspired by them. And I've already written a number of stories down with him. So both of them have come up with so many wonderful ideas, and I feel like they're going to be my inspiration for a long time.
Right. And I love to tell kids that, I'm an author. It's the greatest job in the world because I get to make stuff up for a living. And it's like I have
For
no limits.
sure.
I have no limits. I can do
There's no
whatever I
limits.
want.
No one's there to tell you that's not possible. So what was funny is in this story, my son ends up going to Jupiter to build a carousel. And we all know that it's a gas planet, right? So when my son said it has to be Jupiter, and I said, well, can it just be Mars? Because it's more realistic, right? And he said, no, mom, anything is possible. That's what we've been talking about. In the future, there could be a suit that's created where you could survive a mission to Jupiter. And I said, you know what? It's kind of metaphoric. Children should believe that anything is possible and they should go for it. And they shouldn't just be limited to what we tell them is possible. So I said, you're right. We're including Jupiter in this book and it's for a reason.
Right. Well, and my thought on that would be, I mean, I do believe in science and everything like that, but a lot of times they're not absolutely correct the first time out. It's like sometimes they have to adjust it. So maybe somewhere in the future, it's like that gas is just a layer. And then when you get below it, it's a perfectly good planet. That would be my thought.
Yeah, you never know. It's a fiction book, obviously, but I just love it because it has so many empowering messages for kids, and to see kids shoot up to the moon and to build these amazing creations. I just love, how it focuses on STEAM, including the arts as well. But
Right.
I just believe that anything is possible for our kids, and we have to be there to nurture and encourage them.
Right. And it's like, for those of you who are not familiar with what she's talking about, STEM and STEAM, that is science, technology, engineering. A is for arts in the STEAM instead of the STEM, and mathematics. Those are technical fields that are very underrepresented by, people of color and also by women. So,
Sure.
we do want to encourage everyone to try and go into those, because I think it's we're losing a lot of those really intelligent, groundbreaking people in these fields because we're so busy in social media and popularity and likes and stuff like that. So yeah, I agree with you. Let's encourage them to go after these fields, especially if they have any interest. I think it's amazing. It's like I never wanted to be an astronaut, but then I have a fear of heights. So that's kind of my thing. So, so you continue to provide literacy outreach, which I think is amazing, but specifically in your Latino community. Why is that such a critical part of your author journey?
Well, I think it's so important because there's so many limitations sometimes. A lot of the families don't have access to books every day. And we talk about the language barrier, where sometimes if the parents don't speak another language, then they may not be reading to their kids. It's not that they don't want to, they just don't have the resources to go buy an $18 book. And maybe their libraries are not close to their homes, and transportation could be an issue. So I really feel like it's my job to go into these neighborhoods and to find these families and to provide them with free books and to give them access. I've heard from so many families that I've gone into the neighborhoods to read to them and like do pop-up readings. They've been so grateful for the experience. And while some people would say, oh, they're not going to like the books, that's not something that they're into, they are all embracing the books. And I'm hearing stories from them later on of my child sleeping with your book every day. Thank you so much. Grandma was able to, for the first time, read it to her grandson. Mom was for the first time able to, step away from the kitchen and read a book. So that is just so powerful. You're building these relationships, this bond, and you're making reading fun. And when you make reading fun, that is when you create a reader. When you tell a child that they're going to only read because it's an assignment, that's not always fun. Sometimes they run from that. But if you cultivate this love of reading with the entire family, where literacy has been a big issue, and where proficiency has been a big issue in low-income neighborhoods, I think we can fight it one book at a time and show these families that reading is amazing. Show the children that they too can be super readers, no doubt.
Right.
So
Well,
that's why it's so important.
yeah, well, and I agree with you because, if we give everybody all the tools and get them to where they don't have to keep going and looking for that resource that isn't readily available, then we do open the world to them. But I think also it inspires those young minds to look in books for, answers. It brings up topics and conversations, and it just opens a whole new world to them of possibilities. Because
It really does.
to me, it's like books are like I get to be or do anything in the world. So to me, it's an endless adventure.
Oh my goodness. Donna, I had the privilege of visiting an orphanage in Cabo San Lucas, and I had called them and let them know I was going to be taking a lot of books, suitcases of books for them. And at first, the director didn't know what to make of it. He didn't know like if the children were going to respond well. And I said, please just let me go there and read to the kids. I have books that I want to take to them. Well, they so embraced this opportunity that I was reading books to them for an entire hour. They did not want me to leave. And so everyone ended up getting a book. And yes, I get the phone calls that the kids are sleeping with their books, that the kids are now writing their own stories. While I was there, one young boy who was 15 came up to me when I was signing books in private, and he said, I've never told anyone, but I've been writing poems and I have this book under my bed. And he read me some of these poems, and his writing was amazing, but he was too embarrassed until he heard from me to tell anyone. The director of the orphanage didn't even know that he was writing these. So I am working with him, and I told him he's going to be published one day. Like, he's amazing. And it's just like the light that we're sparking in these kids, that they have it in them, because we all have it in us to write.
Yes, we all have a story to tell.
Yes.
And when you shift over into fiction and imagination, it's like we all have endless stories to tell. So I am so excited that that's what's going on. I've been to different events and had older children come up to me and talk to me about my books, and that is so rewarding. It's like I've talked about an event that I had in LA where that happened, and to me, that was the total sum of any reward that I would need for all of the hours that it took me to write and publish that book. I'm like, if I never make another dollar or dime off of this book, I've been well paid. So I do get what you're talking about. So what's coming up next for you?
So I'm super excited to be writing a series for Mr. Mccaw. I'm writing Mr. Mccaw Part 2. I love this book to pieces, and it's getting a lot of buzz in LA. I've actually heard from some movie directors who are like asking me to write Part 2 because they said that they're super interested in this possibly being an animation. So we'll see where that goes, but I'm super excited to bring even more books to our community that are culturally relevant and that really spark their imagination, because my thing is to write fun stories. We don't always have to write about, having a hard life. Like, we experience that day in and day out. So I feel like children really need an escape. They really need an adventure. So that's what I hope to provide with my books: positive, fun, uplifting stories.
Right. And I talk about this all the time. You can tell a fun, exciting adventure story and still have underlying lessons. It doesn't have to jump right out at you as being, a difficult thing that has to be overcome. So I do applaud you for that. So where can people find you and follow you?
Oh, thank you. Yes, social media, of course. And they can follow me at Cielito Lindo Books on Facebook, also Instagram, Cielito Lindo Books. You can follow my personal author page, Leticia Ordaz TV, and my website, cielitolindobooks.com. That's where you can find your books for my children and some author tips. I talk about my outreach that I do in the community and the important work that I think all authors need to be doing. When we become authors, I really believe that we can't have a mindset of we're here to sell books, we're here to be the next J.K. Rowling's. I really feel like there needs to be a purpose. We have to have a mission. And when you have a mission and your heart's behind it, you're going to succeed. So yeah, definitely follow me for tips at cielitolindobooks.com.
Right. And for those of you like me who don't know how to spell that, it is CIELITO LITO Books, BOOKS.com. We will have all of the links that we talk about to her books and to all of our social media in the show notes. So be sure to check those out. So is there anything else that you want to share with us? Because I'm telling you, I'm such a fangirl. I know you keep saying this and you don't believe me, but I am. So I really just don't want to let you go. I'm just like so excited that you're here. So what else would you like to share with us? Oh, and before you go, we also want to know when we can get this new book, the space mission book.
Oh, yes. So this is out in March, and you can actually pre-order it on my website right now. But for those of you who like to shop on Amazon, I know a lot of people think that's easy. It's there. It will be there as well. And really looking to get into a number of local indie bookstores because those are my favorite. I love when families can go into those indie bookstores and find those books that are just going to change their lives and make them happy, make them readers.
Oh, that is so awesome. And I am so very happy that you were here today. And if you'd stick around, we're going to just do a quick tip. We're going to talk about marketing today. So the tip today, we're talking about flexibility in your marketing plan. As Leticia mentioned, is when her book came out, she had all of these plans for marketing her book. And then everything shifted and changed because of the pandemic. She was not able to do the in-person events that she had planned to promote her book. And she was able to shift gears and go on to Zoom, do some of these virtual events. So I want to remind you that when you are planning promotion, whether it is a book that is already out or a new book that is coming out, please do make room in your marketing plan, in your promotion plan, to be flexible, to have some virtual events, to have some in-person events, to have some events that could be shifted from in-person to virtual or vice versa, just so that you have a lot of flexibility. There are so many ways that we as authors can promote and talk about our books. Some of the amazing things that she's talked about, you know, these pop-up readings, those are very exciting and they do get you to the grassroots of your audience. There's also doing these outreach to children's hospitals and orphanages. Those places are always in desperate need, especially of children's authors to come in and speak to these kids. They don't often have the benefit of direct care or a lot of people cheering them on. So anything that we can do in that community is always amazing. There is such a large contingent of homeless people out there that don't have access to books. A lot of times they're asked to leave the libraries and stuff like that. So, you know, you can find community centers that do help those people, that you can schedule something with them either in person or online to get your books out there. So just remember to be a little bit more flexible with your marketing plan. You do put those things in person, but I want you to think outside the box a little bit. Where are you going to find your readers? Where do they reside? What's easy for them? Because what's easy for you as the author may not be easy for your reader, and it's your job to find them, not for them to find you. So I am so happy that we got to talk with Leticia today. And thank you so much, Leticia, for being here. Don't forget to go check out her books, Mr. Mccaw, Mr. Mccaw's Cielito Adventure, That Girl on TV Could Be Me, and the new one coming out next month, The Carousel King and the Space Mission. And we can't wait to find out more about the continued Mr. Mccaw adventures that you have coming up. So do you have any other new events coming up that they might be able to go check you out in person?
Yes. So I have a big event coming up for Cesar Chavez Day in March. So yes, this is going to be in person. So just stay tuned to my Instagram. We're still working out the exact details, but we're doing a kite fest. We're doing a book reading, and it's going to be like a free festival for the community. They're going to be serving free food. So it's going to be a lot of fun for the community and super accessible for everyone to go on out and get a free book. How cool is that?
That is amazing. And that's going to be here in the Sacramento area.
It is going to be in the Sacramento area. And I just want to mention a tip. You said, do I have any last tips for, and I hope that like aspiring writers won't be so intimidated by the process. You know, a lot of us are busy moms and we don't have a whole lot of time to spend hours and hours writing. But if you have an idea, jot it down. And even if you can work on your story for 15 minutes a day, it's going to go a long way. So don't go in and sit down and say, I have to finish the story right now. I just don't have the time. I'm so overwhelmed. I feel like your creative juices will be flowing. If you do a little a day, tackle a little a day. And definitely if you have a good title or a good story, get that on a piece of paper. Even if you're sitting at your child's practice, you have to write it on your hand, you have to write it on your phone. Do what it takes to make your dreams come true, because you too have what it takes to be an author. Thank you.
Oh, that is such an amazing point that you're making, and a tip. And I 100% agree, because, it it's entirely up to you. I know for myself, I have been writing since I was 4 or 5 years old, and I never thought that I had a voice that anybody would want to listen to. And I was 58 years old before I released my first book. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with waiting that long, but I really wish that I had felt inspired and supported earlier to where I could get out there. So the children's author community and the author community in general is very supportive. If you are unsure of what you're doing and you need a little bit more support, please reach out to us. We are more than happy to give you a guiding, helping hand or a shoulder to talk to us about what is and what is not the best approach. So, as I said, remember your own voice, but take her advice and go ahead and write that book. I think you'll be happy in the end. So, I can't thank you enough for coming on today, Leticia, and I'm so excited. I'm so overjoyed. I can't contain myself, but I hope that you do come back, and we hope that all of your writing dreams land perfectly. So see you guys next time. Bye.
Thank you.